I have always been interested in language learning, and I was learning Cantonese about 10 or 11 years ago. And I had also discovered at that time the mini disc player, which was the big technology 11 years ago. Of course, now the MP3 player is better than the mini disc player. But I discovered that I could record stuff and listen to it wherever I wanted to. It was so much more convenient than the old, tape recorders. And so I was listening to Cantonese radio, and I heard that there was an immigrant from China who had arrived here and had all his money stolen at the airport. And we were building software for the forest industry at that time. I have a company that's in the trade in wood products, and we were also building software basically for sawmills. So I thought, this guy had all his money stolen. He just arrived here, so we'll hire the guy. In the best case, he's good, he works out and he stays with us. In the worst case, we helped him out for a couple of months. So this guy came to work for us, very nice guy, had a high score in TOEFL, but he essentially couldn't communicate. Like, he would sit in a meeting, he didn't really understand what we were saying, we couldn't really understand what he was saying. There were words there, but communication wasn't happening. So we started looking at ways. First of all, the ESL schools are basically for the very basic level. There was nothing there for him. We started developing this thing for learning English, which we called The Linguist. And we started that about 7 or 8 years ago. In the end, we decided, and we were hoping that could be useful to immigrants, but the whole immigrant language learning thing is very structured. It's a little bit bureaucratic. We weren't able to make it a success, so we changed it into a multi-language platform so that people around the world are members, people around the world help each other learn languages. And so now we've got 19 languages on there. I worked for the Canadian government. I was a Canadian government trade commissioner. I had learned French. Of course, I did my university training in France, so I was quite confident that I could learn another language. The government announced back in 1968 that they were going to, in fact, we knew that the government was negotiating with China to establish diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China. And then the government said they were going to send someone to Hong Kong at that time to learn Chinese. So when I heard about that, I said, yeah, I want to do that. That sounds interesting. I'm sure I can do it. So, in fact, I started studying Chinese in the embassy. There was a fellow, in those days, it was Taiwan, the Republic of China, which had their embassy in Ottawa, and I took lessons in Chinese. Then I went to my boss and I said, look, I can do it. I've started learning Chinese. I'm interested. Why not me? And so he said, fine. So I was sent to Hong Kong to learn Chinese. Language is a question of time. So you got to put in the hours. And I did it full time. I was totally motivated. I was studying 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Within 3 months, I was reading newspapers. After 6 months, I read my first Chinese novel in Chinese, Lao She, the Luo To Xiangzi is the name of the book. And 8, 9 months, I was done. And at that point, I could translate newspaper editorials from English to Chinese, from Chinese to English. I had to write a diplomatic note. I had completed the requirements of what was then called the British Diplomatic Service Mandarin Chinese exam. So about 8, 9 months. Wow. However, I speak Chinese better now than I did then. I wrote more characters then because we had to learn all the characters, and I haven't been writing them since. But since that time, I've continued to listen to Chinese, read Chinese, and of course, I've learned other languages like Japanese and Russian and so forth and so on. And the more languages you learn, the better the brain gets at processing all these different languages, surprisingly. So I think I speak Chinese better today than I did back in 1969 when I completed my course. 那么我刚才是用这个英文讲一讲这个语言学习这个问题。那怎么学习英语呢？第一呢，这个英语的发音是，我认为，因为我是从这个英语的这个出发点来学习中文，我觉得这发音差别不大，有很多的声音，在英文也有，在这个中文也有。当然我们英文没有这个声调这个问题。但是有某一些声音，比如说最后的这个 consonant， 是比较不容易，因为对这个讲中文的人，因为中文没有这个最后的这个 consonant 我不知道在中文讲什么。还有呢，中文的那个字的次数和英文的也差不多。 所以在某一些方面，我认为这个对这个讲中文的人学习英文不应该是很难的问题。Once you have learned one language, your confidence that you can do this, that you can genuinely become fluent in another language, you get that confidence. Until you've done it, you don't know what it feels like, and so you don't have the confidence. And confidence is very important in language learning. So the more languages you learn, the more confident you become. The second thing is, if you only have one language, that one language kind of sets the pattern. This is the language that your brain is used to dealing with. When you learn a second language, you introduce to your brain a whole new set of patterns, new sounds, new patterns. So now your brain is a little more flexible. If you take a third language on, now you've got a whole new set of sounds and patterns, so that each new language is less and less strange for your brain, because the brain is used to dealing now with different ways of saying things, different sounds, so you just get better and better at learning languages. And you also know how to do it. Like you learn how to learn. And that's the other big problem. Most people learning languages have no idea how to go about learning a language. And the way they are taught at school is not very effective. So the only thing they have to go by is what they did at school. And that's not a good way to learn languages. 咁咧用廣東話講咧，廣東話咧，我覺得好聽喎。我原本係學國語咧，好耐就未學過廣東話，學廣東話，因為我以為好難學。不過實在咧，一開始學咧，乜嘢語言都係一樣，你要開始又要即係要聽要睇好多，咁就慢慢會好啲啦。好，都係英文都係一樣。